podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. Nobody's family is perfect, and some of the wounds that we pick up or the lies we believe about ourselves can be traced back to our family life. Sometimes those wounds can run very deep. Alex joins us this week to share about her experience of family growing up, the wounds and the lies that are part of her story, and how God has brought life to these places, particularly through her marriage and through motherhood. We hope that this is helpful for you, and please know that we're praying for you all in a very special way this week. God bless you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Thicket. My name is Erin, and I am joined by one of my co-hosts, whose name is
Rachel.
And we have
Hi.
another co-host whose name is Nicole, who's not able to be with us this week, but we have a beautiful guest. So if you're watching on YouTube, you will notice that there's a random third person that you haven't seen before in here. And her name is
Alex.
Hey. Woo. Okay. Listen, it's just okay. So here's the background for anybody who's listening. So I used to work in university chaplaincy at the Newman Center. And Rachel and I met through the Newman Center. It was through the Newman. Yeah, it was through Newman.
It was when I was at U of T doing
Mm-hmm. And then I met Alex through the Newman Center because she started working there, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun to work with you.
It was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh.
Work with you.
Yeah. I totally remember when they were doing your interview and somebody came up and they're like, I think they gave the job to this like red-haired girl. Her hair is like so red. Which is kind of funny because it's not your natural hair color.
I was like, right now it's not red, but it was really red at that time.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yes, Alex is the mummy of a small girl, of a little girl. So, but at the time, your hair was like vibrantly red.
It was very red, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember that was like an era though. You know, I don't know if any of you guys, if you think back about like jobs that you've had, and like sometimes there's just like a special era of like when the people that you got to work with, you know, and the job that you're doing, that's like will always have a special place in my heart, you know,
totally.
in your heart. Yeah. I feel like that was that.
Yeah.
It was an era, you know.
It was.
Yeah.
And if anyone's watching, it was like that red.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like
there's
actual like red, like vibrant. Yeah.
There's an icon behind, for people not watching, there's an icon behind Alex and she's pointing to like one of the red colors in it.
Mary. Mary's word.
Mary.
Okay, and here's the other reveal. So I have also another reveal. So if you're not watching, then we will describe what this is, but I just wanted to catch the look on Alex's face.
What are we doing?
So what I have just held up is a bottle of Smirnoff Peppermint Twist vodka, which is okay. So first of all, just in case you haven't seen this before, I don't drink hard alcohol. Like I just don't enjoy it. But Smirnoff Peppermint vodka, for some reason, it just tastes like a liquid candy cane. And it's like,
really?
Yes, it's unreal. But the bottle, if you scratch it and you can sniff it, it's a scratch and sniff bottle. And we used to pull this out after like events, you know, when we have events around Christmas and stuff like that. And then we'd have all the students and then we'd like clean up the whole place and whatever. And then we'd all just sit down and have like a shot
of Smirnoff peppermint. What is it? Peppermint twist.
Like
peppermint twist. Yeah. So in your oh, so many good memories. So in your honor, Alex, I'm having a sip of peppermint twist vodka. I won't have any more until later, though, lest this episode just get way too messy. Anyways,
that's awesome.
I didn't know that existed, so that's something cool. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you want to tell us are you allowed to tell us what you're doing for work now, Alex? Do you mind?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm the regional guide for Canada for Divine Renovation. ministry, and basically, Divine Renovation seeks to inspire, connect, and equip priests and parishes to bring their parishes from maintenance to mission. So I just get the privilege of journeying with priests across Canada and supporting them and their leaders in their context to bring about renewal so that more people can know Jesus and help them in that, bringing more people to Jesus. So yeah,
it's super cool.
It's really amazing. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing
blessing.
ministry.
Mhm.
And also super cool that you get to like meet with priests and them just be like, blah, here's the things that are happening and what am I supposed to do? That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, that's
It
good.
is awesome.
I mean, it doesn't come close to the privilege of working with me, but I mean, you know,
nothing does, y'all. Nothing does. Newman was so instrumental though in bringing my heart, like the Holy Spirit, like putting this fire in my heart throughout time and bringing me here.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Newman was big for me.
We'll put a link in the show notes for Divine Renovation if anybody's interested in like reading more about it or seeing what it's all about. But yeah. Okay, so here's the generic question for you guys. How are you? How was this last week? How has it been for the last little while? Because this is the first episode after Easter, right? So like we've now entered into the joy of Easter, which we're not actually in now because it's Lent when we're recording this.
Yeah, we're
oh,
like
thank goodness. I was like, I hope I don't have to lie like I'm in Easter right now. I'm not gonna say the word.
No, we're knee deep in Lent.
What
are you looking forward to about Easter?
That's a very different question than how are you?
Yeah, that's true. Okay. How are you? Just go with how are you? Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm in DC right now and I drove back from Canada yesterday and we got home at like way past midnight. So it was like very, very late and the time change and everything. And so I'm just exhausted, but not unhappy, just very, very tired. So I might not make a lot of sense in this episode because I'm trying to. I'm going to try my very hardest and it may work.
It may work. That's awesome. Well, sleep deprivation, that's good for you. Alex, is there any sleep deprivation in your life at the moment?
Yeah, plenty. You know, it's just been a while. You know, my little 1.5-year-old, she's just been not liking nighttime without her mama. So, but yeah, the time change is rude. So, so that's extra rude. But yeah, I think actually, just over a week ago, I was struggling with some desolation, like dryness, desolation. And I was actually thinking about this episode, and I'm like, Lord, I really hope this changes before this episode comes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he totally delivered.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah.
And
that's good.
Cool.
That's true. We try not to be too depressing. So I'm glad you're not in the depths of despair.
I was like, we are a podcast about suffering. So it wouldn't have been like way off brand, you know? It would have been fine.
Yeah, it's on
relatable.
Brand. Yeah, relatable.
Yeah, that's right. Totally.
That's right. Relatable. Exactly. Yeah. Good. Okay, so we wanted to have you on because we did, if anybody's been listening for a while, also if you're a new listener, hello, we're very happy to have you with us. Hello. But if you've been listening for a little while, you might have noticed that some of the episodes in the earlier part of the season, like the second half from kind of January on, we talked a lot about some family stuff and marriage and big families and being a parent of a child with a disability and things like that. And so we definitely we're hoping to have somebody who might be able to share a little bit about their experience of family life, where family life was maybe looked different than the typical, kind of what is the word that I'm looking for? Nuclear family. That's it. Than the typical nuclear family, or just because people's experiences are very varied in terms of family. So, and then we thought of Alex because she is articulate, but also very prayerful about what she shares. Because it's one of those things where it's a sensitive topic, right? So you're not going to like go in and on March 4th of this was the trauma. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of tackled it in a way that's honest, but also like responsible, and really considerate of that it's more than just one life that's being spoken of here. So we're happy that you said yes, Alex, because you were the number one choice for this topic. You are the only choice that we're making.
Like, you are very kind and gracious. Please, y'all.
Number one and only.
And disappointed.
Yeah. No. That's good. So we'll just turn it over to you, and you can maybe share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure. First of all, also, yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm like, it's a real, y'all have some heavy, big hitters and stuff, and I'm just like a little minor league, like softball, like not even minor league, just a house league, Anyways, so that's great and wonderful. But yeah, hopefully people can resonate. Hopefully the Holy Spirit will, anything that resonates, it's from him, and hopefully all just praises him. But yeah, my testimony is, not unheard of. I was a cradle Catholic, like many. Grew up in the church. I grew up in the church going to mass every day with my grandparents. My grandparents were very practicing, very authentically and genuinely practicing the faith. And so yeah, I grew up very involved in different ministries, and so much so that like my personality type is, I don't know if anyone's done like Strength Finders, but my top two are like executor. And so I think I have always been that way, because when I was in like grade 4, I created my own Legion of Mary at lunch recess and had like this 2-inch binder for attendance and different things. And yeah, like at mass, for our school masses in grade 6, we didn't have music, so I was like, we need music, because I've been in the choir since I was 7. So I gathered my friends, we all sang, made a choir, had a teacher with a guitar.
So great.
Yeah, I learned to make rosaries really young and all this stuff, and I was involved in youth group in so many different areas. I was involved in 2 parishes at a point, and just all the different ministries. But through this, I actually didn't know Jesus's personal love for me, or know that I was really loved by God at all. And I really actually convinced myself that I was a mistake, because I was defining myself based on how the world would. And even how sometimes when I was a bit older in Catholic circles with certain discussions, based on how these discussions went, they were talking about a minority, and they didn't know me, and they didn't realize they were talking about me. And so I very easily at that point would just go inward and define myself in these ways. And so, like Aaron alluded to, I didn't grow up in a nuclear family, and I mentioned my grandparents. So I never met my dad. I wouldn't know him to see him or anything. I have no idea if he's in the country or anything like that. So he wasn't in the picture. And we lived with my grandparents. And they really became like, they were like my parents to me, which is hard to explain to many people, but they're amazing. And really knew how to suffer well, but just through a lot of things in life, I really got to understand at a young age, just the difficulties of mental health issues, that adults can face. And I was very aware of them at a young age. And I developed this huge self-reliance and independence, and I'm like, okay, I've got this. I'm going to hold everything. I'll always hold everything in, and come out in so many different ways through my life. I just sought this false happiness for many years, was completely living of the world. And when I was a young adult and I had moved out on my own, and Aaron and I were roommates at a point in Scarborough. What's up?
In a terrible place with massive centipedes. This is just an interjection.
One of my best places.
Oh my gosh. It was perfect aside from that. But I'm just telling you, there was one time that I saw this centipede come up out of the heating grate, and it literally like went up on its legs. It was the size of my hand. I tried to kill it with stuff. Anyways.
Yeah,
we had good times there though. Yeah,
it was good times. Oh, they were the worst. But yeah, so thankfully that was after my reversion. I did have a reversion. I don't still think this way. So yeah, I just really struggled with the Lord. I actually completely left the church at a point. It didn't take really much for me to go, even though I was so involved. My heart wasn't converted by Jesus. Like I didn't know him personally. Even though my grandparents lived it out so well, my heart was just so um, hardened, and it was like made of stone in a way. And so even though it never was, but that's how maybe it felt. And so I sought all these things of the world, and then I was invited on a silent retreat. And through that silent retreat, just in little Bible roulette in front of a Saint Joseph statue, and just the questions I was thinking, asking God and asking if I'm even a good person or all these things. And it was after university. um, I I just came to the scriptures like in Jeremiah about being known, like all of before you were in the womb, I formed you, and I came to other scriptures in the New Testament about even the hairs on your head are counted, like you're good and all this stuff. And then later, um, at the evening mass, there were no readings connected to this, like for the day. And the theme of the retreat wasn't even on this, but exactly the things I was thinking of reading in scripture, the priest was preaching on. And it totally opened up my heart to be like, wow, okay, like, yeah, like, whoa. It just changed my world. That I was no longer defined by all these things. And it's not that I didn't have one of those 180 moments of completely changing my life at once. It was like me kicking and screaming with the Lord, kind of as an analogy, over time. But Newman was also very instrumental in really continuing to lead me closer to him, and allow me to not accept a lot of the things that I previously was, and how I was searching for happiness and searching to be loved and known. And then I really came to know of his like deep personal love for me, and just how kind he's been to me, no matter how far away I've been. And even now, like he's just so gracious, and yeah, so that's a bit of my story.
Nice.
And God's pretty cool. And there's just, it's not that I'm not there. I'll never be there until, God willing, I die and I'm in front of him. And I'm nowhere near perfect. And it's not to say that even in the topics that we're talking about, that I've always responded, correctly or perfectly or like imitating Christ. But he's definitely changed my heart to a heart of flesh, and a heart that can actually be merciful and see that the problem isn't necessarily other people, but sin. And my pride through it all, because that, we can all go through, situations and technically maybe be a victim, but there's kind of this purifying fire, like how gold is refined through fire, and like this testing that Jesus would permit and allow, so that all these impurities that developed through this brokenness and woundedness through all these years of my life, that that he was able to like bring me through it. Like he knew I wouldn't just diminish in the fire. Like I felt like I kind of was at many points right before, and then through coming to really know him, he's allowed me to, given me so much grace to be able to see roots of sin in my own sin, because like sometimes it's just like this pride, it needs to go.
Yeah,
and so that's still a big work in process. So anyway, sorry, that was longer than I had anticipated.
No, that's good though.
But
I'm curious to hear, because it really, like, it strikes me when you say about not having, kind of the typical nuclear family, right? And about having that love of Gam and Papa and growing up. And I'm just wondering how, like, in the experiences that you had when you were young and you were kind of picking up these like wounds, and then the reinforcement with like, I have to do everything myself, or like, am I good, or like those questions, because we all have those in whatever form they kind of come, or whatever the wounds look like from various things. But I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that was like, but also how, like, now kind of looking back, how the Lord was still providing for you throughout your life with like moms and dads of various kinds, you know?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great, huge question.
Right.
Like, I felt like I was a very internally stressed child, though people wouldn't know it. I love to joke, and I still do. And I don't like people knowing my weaknesses. And I think that's one of the areas of pride that I would struggle with, because I would harden my heart even to others in situations. If I heard them going through something and I felt like it actually wasn't as hard as something, then I'd be like, oh, like, you need to brush it off, or just keep moving, or just keep trekking on. And there was like a hardness of my heart where I wouldn't even be empathetic towards others. But I was able to witness, like, Gamma and Papa, like you were saying, like, how did the Lord provide? Gamma and Papa provided this, like, such an authentic witness of the gospel through how they interacted with others and how they suffered. Like, I know offering it up can be like a trialing term that you hear, but for me, I never viewed it in maybe as bad a way, because I saw it witnessed really well. And I didn't actually, because of my pride, I didn't always think that that was actually a strength. Like, in my immaturity and pride, I viewed it as a weakness. And I was like, no, like, there's justice, right? Justice needs to come for all these different things. And, there is right and wrong, and that is true. But you can unite your suffering to Jesus in a way that is practical and actually transforms people. And even though I didn't always feel it, I could see how that was constantly working. And all of these things, even with Gamma and Papa, they've both passed away, and Aaron was like a beautiful friend through those times. Within like a year and 2 days, 3 of my immediate family members passed away. And so they were 2 of them, and they were like my best friends to me. And they, like, some examples, like Papa was like, he lost his 3-year-old younger sister when she was young. He was a kid. He had a twin brother, and at 9 he passed away because the surgeons, like back in those days, and they're Irish in Newfoundland, they drank a lot of alcohol and were alcoholics, and they kind of butchered his throat, and all this stuff happened. Papa was hit by a drunk driver one time and was in the hospital for 3 months. He was announced dead on the radio. Gam heard it and had 2 littles, like, and his mom died when he was like 19. There was just so much suffering and pain he experienced from a young child. And same with Gam. They both experienced so many different trials. And even in my lifetime with them. But I think I've heard, I can't remember who said it, but our brokenness and wounds can either transmit or transform. And when it's really with the Lord, it transforms. And so I've seen how what could be an immense amount of intergenerational trauma was actually transformed and redeemed by the Lord, even though there was, again, we're meeting because my life was nowhere near perfect. But there's just so much work that he did, and so much work he did to protect me through a lot of trials and things as a kid. So yeah, I'm not sure if that fully answers the question. Like, I hope it does, but
I feel like often whatever comes out from questions, like, we just go all over the place with things. We go wherever Jesus is leading us. So it's good. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. I just remember walking with you through like some of those things, right? Like when Papa died and Gam died. And again, what strikes me is like having the witness of people who really suffered was itself something that was transformative for you in like the things that you experienced with other members of your immediate family, right? Because you had this witness of what it can mean when suffering doesn't harden the heart, but when it's like born born with Christ. So it's like that witness that's not even like, it wasn't like, I mean, I don't know, maybe they did they ever sit you down and talk to you about things, or was it more of a witness, or what was that like, what was that dynamic like?
With Gamma and Papa? Yeah, I mean, I think it was more of a witness though, um, just in our everyday life, and I think more of it hit me as I got older, and even more hit me when I was pregnant and realized, oh my gosh, poor Gam was so worried at this point, like when I came home late or didn't answer my phone, like so some things hit you at different points and whatnot, but yeah, I think from speaking at a point after having my like official reversion and really working on my relationship with the Lord and like coming to know him personally and how much he actually loves me and seeks me, every day and has given me like so much. I think it makes me contemplate, or would make me contemplate, like kind of what I was talking about with the refiner's fire. Like, we're called to, Jesus tells us to pray for our enemies or those who persecute you. And sometimes that's incredibly hard. And in moments when, yeah, there is right and wrong, right? And, but we're not always called to fight every battle the way that the world calls us to. And so I think learning from the witness of Gamma and Papa and how they operated, just in their everyday life and with sufferings and things that came through them, um, that fire goes through the pride of your heart in defining your identity based on the thoughts and words of other people. And sometimes, yeah, that can spread widely, and it's really painful because that's not the way that things are supposed to be. Like, this is not God's intentional, like God's original plan, right? And I know that Jesus, he weeps with us as we grieve and when we grieve, and so these things that can be said about you can be so harmful and painful, but at the same time, they're a really good reminder that you're placing, or I'm placing, my identity in other people rather than him. And there have been those times of, like, those, maybe no one else has experienced this, right? But those bathroom cries where it's like your safe space and you are crying so hard, you're screaming in your head, but you don't want it to come out, and you feel so alone. But from the witness of Gam and Papa and the reminders of offering up for souls in purgatory, you have no one to pray for them, or just other people's pains and sufferings, and praying for others and bringing, even in those moments, not going too inward and going outside of yourself for others, through their witness. And I was able to, and have been able to, apply that, and kind of in a way like prostrate my soul, sometimes literally my body. I don't know if you want to keep that in there.
Yeah, we can.
I literally put Sienna to bed like a couple weeks ago, and right when I got her in the crib, I went down and prostrated. I started praying with my head on the floor.
Yeah.
Just like praying for others and stuff, or what's on Jesus's heart, and who I'm called to pray for. But yeah, I think it was just a lot of their witness, like that they walked the walk and talked the talk. And so they didn't need to actually talk much of the talk. Like I should have known better. I feel like, actually, I think you had an episode of this recently, right? Like, I should be better.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
But the Lord just like redeemed my story still. Like, it's like he has a specific will for me. He has a will for me that is not for anyone else but me. And all of these things from before coming to know him personally in my heart are for a reason, that I could submit to him. And yeah, again, I feel like I'm really bad at answering questions. So I hope you didn't set me up with like saying that I'm articulate and people are going to be like, where's the articulation?
I have a question though. I'm wondering, like, so, okay, you were super involved in the church and stuff because through your grandparents, and through kind of, or not through them, but, with living the life that they kind of raised you in, or guided you in, you got really involved, but it wasn't deep, or it wasn't like a relationship with the Lord. But I was just wondering, like, what was your view of God at that time? So, like, I think for all of us, when we have painful parts of our lives, especially ones that are very, integral to who we are and to our identity, and everybody has that, right, in different places, but family is definitely one of them.
Mhm.
So when you have like kind of wounds and struggles in that area, and it's so integral to who you are as a person, obviously that's going to affect how you see God, and for
Mhm.
different people that creates a different reaction. So a lot of people might be like, well, God doesn't exist, or or if he is, he's really cruel because of all of this suffering that's so core in my life. But you were involved at that time, and maybe so I'm just wondering if what was your view of God at that time, and how did you dialogue with that? Like, eventually it obviously changed in your reversion.
Mhm.
um yeah, but I'm just curious about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I believed in him, but I think there were a lot of doubts. But one of the things that I viewed him as is I didn't believe that he was fully perfect, because I believed that we don't even know what perfection is. Like, I had this little conspiracy theory of my own that we don't know what perfection is, so there is room for me to be his mistake. And
Mhm.
I convinced myself of that. I went so inwards, and really my involvement ended up being more for community. And even when I had been involved in two parishes, I fully went over to one other that I was completely involved in. It was by my own accord. Like, my family didn't go to that parish, but a friend had invited me, and it was great, like singing in their choir and just being involved in many ways. But um, I believed in God, and I contemplated so many things that I could contemplate now. But I think because my heart was so hardened in believing that, like, he wasn't who he said he was, um, that yeah, I was just like, okay, but it is what it is. And then I just viewed, oh, the church just needs to get with the times, um like
Yeah.
my grandparents are the only one that I see really living this out, and they're old. So, like,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So
was like,
obviously the
well,
church is,
Update
it's not
needed.
relatable anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so I think I just without wanting to admit that I was a cultural Catholic, I just, even within the pews, and this relates a lot to even my heart for seeing why the church, like, how we're called to really know Jesus in our hearts, because it affects the generations, and we're called to teach our children, we're called to teach generations. But our society is so strong, and there's so much evil lurking that even in small ways, you just never know how you can impact someone by subscribing to the things of society that aren't of God and are.
Right.
It's not to say that God isn't operating there. He's the source of all goodness, but when there are toxic things in society that are contrary to Catholic social teaching, and those, like, seep through conversations and the actions, then it just feels like, oh yeah, we're all here and we believe this, but do we really?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that was kind of my view, where I was like, okay, and even when I did leave, I still believed in him. I wasn't like, there's no God. I was just like, well, I'm called to have my own relationship with him, and it was totally distorted of what it actually is supposed to be. Like, I can say those words, but it's completely opposite of what it's supposed to be. It was just I was treating myself as God, saying, "No, I'll make the rules here, because no, you're not who you say you are, right?"
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of how I
Yeah.
went about things.
I mean, that's a really, like, saying that God is not, or we're not saying, having that doubt, right? Like, God is not who he says he is. Did you, yeah, I mean, you can't trust that, right? So that's not
Mhm.
someone you can trust. Like, so it's kind of interesting because, I mean, I think we can all relate to that. There's not everybody maybe, but there are a lot of even devout Catholics. I think we've, like, been through periods. I definitely have been through periods in my life where I'm like, I don't really know if I can trust you. And it's like the lies that the evil one puts in there. But so then another question of mine is, how did he, and sorry, Erin, maybe you had something that
Yeah,
you
no,
wanted
no,
to
you
add
go
to
first.
this.
You good. I got like 3 questions in my mind, so I'll keep them
Okay.
there. Yeah.
So my question is, when you feel like that, when you're like, I don't know if I can trust you, and there are real reasons in your life that you kind of relate to that, like the idea that you were a mistake wasn't just something that came out of the sky. Like
Right.
it was
Mhm.
something rooted in your experiences and things that you had been through. And that's true for a lot. Like that's how the devil works. So he takes like our
Mhm.
real life crosses and wounds and stuff, and he exploits them. And so it's like, okay, that's coming from somewhere real. But like, how did the Lord sort of soften your heart to that reality and like heal you, and not in necessarily like specific incidents, but like what was the sort of blossoming of the like trust in you of God? Like how did he, because in some ways it's like we don't trust God because of something that's happened in our life that's related to the fall and to
Mhm.
sin and to the brokenness of people and us. And so we don't trust God. But then the remedy really is trusting God.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's kind of that paradox where you really actually it's trusting God that gets you to trust God in the end. So
Mm.
and he just performs that miracle in us, I think, when we're even just a tiny bit open, where he slowly draws that trust out of us and like shows us he is who he says he is.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering, yeah, were there specific moves in your heart where you can remember being like, okay, this was a lie. I believed this lie. Now I no longer
Mhm.
believe this lie.
Yeah. Yeah, there were plenty of things, and he really operated with the time that my heart needed, and he still does. Because, yeah, even thinking about God in your previous question, one of the other things is I really didn't view him as a father. And I couldn't, I just could not, like I would say it in the name of the Father and of the Son, but I really just, you know, would talk to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that was the main one. But I think it was really through a lot of time in prayer after that retreat, time in prayer and reading spiritual readings by, you know, plenty of great authors. Father Jacques Philippe was a
Oh,
great one
so
for me.
good.
Yeah.
he's awesome.
There was this, I remember this book at the retreat center, and it was a prayer book, and there was this prayer called Patient Trust that I would read over and over and over again. And I ended up getting spiritual direction with like the one man aside from Papa that I would trusted, who was a pastor at a point for my parish, and he is just such an amazing father and spiritual father to me. And working at Newman fostered a lot, being able to attend daily mass and like it, from many years ago. And just really time with scripture. I think there was, like you said, all these lies from the enemy. Like, I think it was like in a Abiding Together that they had said the enemy has a bow, like for an arrow, sorry, a bow and arrow for like your heart of weaknesses. And I felt like he had a lot of that on me, but then through reading spiritual readings and books and scripture and prayer and time in mass, my heart slowly just really came to know him more and realized that the lie of isolation, that no one understood my pain, and that, but these are such unique situations. There's no one else like this or that, or these lies of saying that you're completely alone in this and he doesn't love you or you're not lovable and all these things, they just start to go away because, not go away, but the Lord just taps into your heart with the awareness of truth. Like this is true, and it's not one moment. It's not been one moment. It's been a lot of time, intentional time spent in those ways, and really offering a number of sufferings. And even my spiritual director one time, I remember him saying that sometimes we bring in our baggage into the church and we come in front of the altar in our pew and we let it down, and we pray through it and give it to the Lord. But then when we're leaving, we pick it right back up and go out. And I found that I really did that a lot. And so really actually working towards these things and understanding that, wow, the 10 commandments are actually for my good. And I experience goodness and love and truth as I actually try to live them out. And I'm coming closer to him and trying to imitate him. The imitation of Christ I loved that book also. It was really great. And just understanding that even if however many times I fall and I go back, that I'm not defined by these things, and I'm not defined by all these successes that I was chasing, or these relationships or whatever it may be. I'm not defined by these things. I'm actually defined by him. And so that was, yeah, a lot of time spent through those things.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, because I'm sure you probably saw, obviously, lots of families when you were growing up, right? So there's like always that opportunity for comparison with, other people's families and, oh, this and that kind of like, why don't I have this, or things like that, right? And I'm wondering if, especially in the context of like finding that relationship with the Lord and starting to learn like what was true about you, like who you were in him and things like that. I'm curious about like what was the process of grieving? Like, did you have a process of grieving what you didn't have, or what you didn't experience in your younger life, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of steps and stages, and there's like an unending peeling of like understanding. Like, so I know like one of the strengths that came from it was I understood that things could be very different behind closed doors. And that led me to being very interested in people and how they operate and why people do the things they do, and even questioning myself, but not always for the right reasons before. Like it wasn't an examination I was doing before, although now it kind of translates into that. But it led me into, studying sociology and psychology and moving into like being a social services worker. But the comparison, being the thief of joy, that is still such a note that hits. Like I constantly have to check that at all the doors because, and just be aware of it because, yeah, like, okay, here's like this random example. When I was really young, I didn't quite understand at points like how I didn't have a dad. And so I heard the term birth control and I was like, controlling birth. Okay, so my mom took a pill and that's how I'm here. And I remember telling my friend's brother one time when I was really young, I was like, yeah, no, I don't have a dad. Like my mom took a pill and that's how I was born.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
I was really young.
That's
And
kind of adorable.
yeah, it was cute. And then the mom got so mad at him because he was like, no, you have a dad. You have a dad. I'm like, no, I don't. And he's
I
like,
really
no,
don't.
you do. And I was like, no, I don't. And his mom got really mad. And there were like points where in elementary school, I remember this one time, and I was actually reflecting on it with this episode, and I wasn't even going to mention it, but there was one time in class, like in grade 5, we had a supply teacher, and my friend kept talking to me, and I was like trying to be good and be like, okay, like quiet, let's talk after, which is surprising for me, but I was the one trying to stop it. And the supply teacher, every time he looked back, it was me trying to tell her to stop talking.
Yeah, that's the worst.
I don't know what day he was having, but I was not his cup of tea. And so he finally just kind of exploded and said, well, I'm going to call your dad. I'm going to write a note to your dad and make him like sign this. And then he's going to have to go and talk to the principal about you not stopping talking in class and all this stuff. And then he's just going on about, yeah, and he'll go to the principal and have to sign this now. What would your dad think? What would he say to you? What would your dad say? And he repeated. I just remember it being repeated. And I just looked at him kind of in shock and I was like, I don't have a dad. And his eyes, like, I don't know what his process was at that point. If he was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired. Or
yeah, that's right.
or if it was like of pity or whatever it may be. And sometimes, yeah, you get like these looks, and that's also an indicator of where my heart's at, if I want to accept this look or not. But I think, yeah, I just had this perspective of toughing it out, and just like being like steel in certain ways and refusing to ever cry in front of others. And so it was a big deal to actually even like cry in front of my husband or whatever. So I think there's not been one time that he's shown me like this wound that he's there to heal. And sometimes you think you're trying to work on a wound and you're stitching it up, and then boom, it's torn open again. You're reminded of these things. And they can still, they could still be painful. Like, you can forgive. I think something that's been a comfort is in the catechism, where it references that we forgive, but we don't have the capacity to forget. And I think you would always hear, or I would always hear, like, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. So then I'm thinking that if I'm not forgetting, I'm not actually forgiving. And I actually really wanted to forgive. And I remember asking my spiritual director again, he also was a huge part in this healing confession. Oh my gosh, like confession, the Lord just totally healed. So it's literally a healing sacrament. He gets to me in like the depths of my heart there, where I'm crying to him, and he just gets to me through all of these wounds. But I think there's just so many layers to things. And even with social media, it's like I have to really walk a fine balance of, I used to view it in a very different way, and now I could see how God works through social media, and there's a lot of things that can glorify him, but very easily it can be the opposite as well. So I have to walk a fine line of that. And even in my motherhood and the situation, it's like, you hear of all these like villages and like families raising them, and I just would so badly love for Gamma and Papa to hold Sienna, but there's but he provides through it all, and even in the pain, like, that can be with him, and through him. So
it sounds like, it just so sounds like there's in this, I mean, because I remember what you're saying is actually reminding me of our episode that we did with Sister Miriam last year, last season, and I know she's the best. So so she was saying it's sort of, her healing journey is like ongoing. It's never, in a certain sense, never ending. God is constant. He will never stop healing her. This in a really beautiful, positive way. She was sort of sharing this, and that just everything you're saying is reminding me of that. That he's continuing that healing, and it's an ongoing journey, and it's deeper and deeper and fuller and fuller. And it just, the image that I have as you're speaking is like just this surrender. I'm thinking of you prostrate, after you put your baby girl in her crib and you're prostrate on the floor. It's just such a posture of surrender. He's led you sort of, that's sort of the unbeatable posture, like, no matter what the suffering is, no matter how central to your life it is, if that's your posture, it is literally unbeatable. Like, the devil cannot, he cannot conquer that. He just cannot, so it's like this beautiful, and that's the gift. It seems to me that you have like this gift of the desire to constantly surrender, which then gives God constant and always permission to do this work, incredible work of healing in your life in all these different ways, through continued, sufferings and things like that continue to be part of this side of heaven. But which is so hopeful, because we're talking about right now today, and I think probably gonna wrap up soon, but it was something that we're barely, not even scratching the surface of. Is something, and it's really, this episode is just to be an encouragement for everyone, because we all have these wounds at the core of who we are, and these lies at the core of who we are, where we could go the other way, like, so the social media thing, we really could go really deeply in the wrong direction. But it's just surrender. It's just this willingness to say yes to God that changes, and has in your life like changed everything. And it's such a beautiful message of hope. It's just so awesome that way.
Praise God. And like what you're saying just reminded me of Job, and the witness of Job, but also the witness of Job's friends. I think that's also incredibly powerful, to have like God-fearing friends. And like Aaron was totally one of them for me. And especially while like Papa was suffering, and like the part of where his friends, like, they heard of the suffering, so they came together, and when they saw him, they like tore their garments, like they suffered with him. But then when they were with him, they just spent time in silence with him, and it's like, you need friends that will not try to fill gaps or act as if they have answers to things that no one has answers to but God, and and to have that, it's like one of the, the 5 remedies of sorrow by St. Thomas Aquinas. And one of them is, being able to speak with a friend and get it out, and or even just being present with them. And I think like God works through our relationships in those ways too, right? And he definitely showed himself to me through like the people that I could go to and rely on. And even like right after I found about Papa, like Aaron actually was there, like, and was one of the people we prayed for him right away before I actually went to the hospital. And so, just that witness too of other people, like having these people. And I'm sure, Rachel, like y'all are tight. So y'all, I'm sure experience God's love all the time through each other. And he's just like so amazing like that, how he delivers through people and their yeses. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Good. This is the last thing that I want to ask, because it leads like perfectly from that. But even like looking at your relationship with your husband, especially if you're looking at like God's fatherhood and being able to receive that, and especially from dads and husbands, like there's more similarity there than I think sometimes we think about, like the protecting and the providing and the sheltering and the like even the affirmation, like those powerful words of like speaking truth and the goodness of that. Like dads and husbands both have that responsibility, so I'm just wondering what that's been like for you and for Alan, of like how that's been healing for you, and even with Sienna, like with with being a mom, and what how that's been healing for you as well.
I mean, Alan has just been the answer beyond my prayers. And actually, I wrote a litany for our marriage when I was fine, like a couple weeks ago when I was in desolation. And I found it hard to be grateful at this point where I was. And I was writing this litany asking Jesus to help me through all these specific things. And he led me into a place of being able to have a grateful heart again. And it ended with like, thank you for him in all these ways. And part of it was like, thank you for reminding me on like how much I prayed for a man like Saint Joseph, and you delivered my earthly Saint Joseph, and like Aaron, you said, provide and protect. And at our wedding, the homily, the priest gave 4 P's, and it was provide, protect, peace, and patience, and keep these things at the forefront of your marriage. But I think, one of the greatest joys, I think, while I was pregnant was just thinking about like, wow, like this is going to be different, like little baby, before I even knew whether she was a girl or not. It took 5 ultrasounds to confirm that she was a girl because she was so active.
That's great.
Surprise, surprise. She's a little tiny dancer now, and she was in my womb. But just thinking about like, wow, like little one, you have a dad and he wants you and he loves you like already, and I was just like, wow, like how cool is it? Like your dad, you can call dad, like he's your dad, and he just like loves you so much, and he's just done so much to protect us and to provide and prioritize us, and it's just been so amazing. A funny little story before meeting him that I'll just share, and I've shared many times, and Aaron loves to share it, or used to love to share it. Was my New Year's resolution at a point. You'll see how so much brokenness I entertain. But my New Year's resolution at a point was to not date someone that has or to date someone that has never been to jail. That was my goal. I was like, I'm seeing a little pattern here. And on our first date, I asked him all the questions. Within 5 minutes, I was like, so have you ever been to jail, including the drunk tank? No drunk tank, nothing. And so he was, I think he might have been a bit scared.
And they were set up by a priest, who was at Newman doing some stuff, and is best friends with Alex's husband now, who set them up. So, I mean, that there was a pretty good indication he might not have been to jail.
It's just been amazing how the Lord provides through him. And I can witness just friendship relationships. He just shows himself through the best parts of people. And so he's just really awesome and my best friend, and I could have never never imagined. And so, yeah.
Mm.
And he
Yeah,
never,
God, it's so
never
cool.
been to jail.
And he's never been to jail. Yeah.
And he never
Never went to jail.
What's up?
I love that image though of like
Yeah.
Sienna, you know, and like him being a dad to her and how the Lord just
Mhm.
redeems things and how
Yeah.
he like the ways that he heals things are so creative.
Mhm.
Like they really are, you know?
Yeah.
Which is so that's beautiful to hear. Which I
Can I
feel like
tell you
that's so much
one more
hope.
thing?
Please, yes.
Yeah.
So the night before I found out I was pregnant, just a few days before that, I was given a couple of health diagnoses in which the world and Google would say it's like really not possible to get pregnant.
Mm.
And so we were doing NFP, natural family planning,
Mhm.
and I was supposed to take a pregnancy test on Gam's birthday, which is December 7th.
Mm.
And I was just honestly feeling really down from reading everything like these. Okay, like man, we wanted a family of like at least 5 kids or something, you know, we want a big
Yeah.
family. And I was like, oh, I'd love to have this, you know.
Yeah.
So we had like this real desire. And so but I was feeling really down based on seeing the doctor on Friday and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And Google is rude. So
Totally.
I didn't end up taking the test on Gam's birthday. And then the 8th came, and I really thought I wasn't pregnant. I was so convinced. And I was going back and forth with Alan. I was like, should I? Oh, sorry. I skipped a very important part. That night when I was feeling down, there's this image of the Holy Family that Newman gave me when I moved on into campus ministry closer to where I lived. And it's of Mary when she was pregnant, and Joseph is like holding her. And we have it up in our room, And I just looked at it at a point, and with my sadness, I kind of released it. And I was like, you know what, Lord, like, if you want us to have children, you'll make it happen, no matter what way that is, whether it's biological or through adopting. Like, I just surrender, like, I just submit myself to you and your will for this. So you can make the impossible possible. And if it's your will, like, I know we'll have children or a child or whatever it may be, but I'll be okay with whatever it is. And the next day I was totally convinced I wasn't pregnant. And I was telling Alan, I'm like, oh, should I? No, maybe it wouldn't. But wouldn't it be amazing if we found out on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception? And he was like, yeah, it'd be cool. And I'm like, oh, no, I won't. And so many times I went back and forth. And then, yeah, I finally took it and found out we were pregnant. And so,
On the
that's
Feast of the
so
Immaculate Conception.
cool.
That's so
That's
cool.
yeah.
so beautiful.
Our Lady is awesome.
Yeah. So, like, when you say he's creative, it's like, man, you are, and you are a source of real humor. You know, we forget how funny you are, too.
Yeah. See, that's your God wink. That's great.
Yeah, that's right. That's the
It's a
God wink.
pretty
I
good
love
God
it.
wink.
It's a great God wink.
Oh my goodness.
That's literally like that's
Yeah.
as you know, God wink as
Yeah.
he gets.
No, it pretty much is. Yeah, I know. Listen, I'm still gonna ask you anyways, Rach. You can share your
okay.
God wink for the week, but
It's not that good. I love them. I mean, all God winks are good, but you know, degrees, and that one was amazing.
that was a pretty epic one.
Yeah. Mine is just very funny and little. I was home in Canada for spring break, and I got to go to spiritual direction, which I hadn't been to in a while. And my spiritual director is really awesome. He's just like, he does a thing where he like teases me, and he's like, oh man, God just, you know, he just kind of, you know, in my journey with the Lord, he just kind of spoils you. He spiritually spoils you, right? She just, and he kind of affirms this being like a daughter of God. I think he's like, you're just spoiled daughter of God. Like, oh, Rachel, fine. And he just like does this thing, which is really beautiful. And it just makes me remember how much God loves me, you know? But then I was just like telling him about a bunch of things that, you know, just simple things, moving to DC and how God sort of laid out things for me and has helped me, my living situation, and just different kinds of things that have worked out in a way that you just know that it's God who's helping you, or peace with certain difficult things that I'm trying to work through, that I just know that it's God. So many of these situations have been happening in the last little bit, and I was just catching him up on all of that. And he didn't know about our podcast, honestly. I'm the worst. I'm not good at sharing about our podcast. So I didn't even, I mean, I think there's so many other things going on. So I must have told him, but I don't think it was like a major thing that we were talking about in spiritual direction. So I don't think, you know, either I told him he didn't remember or whatever. So I mentioned the podcast to him later because in my spiritual direction, he just goes, man, like that's so God just keeps winking at you. He's just like winking.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and he doesn't. He's never really heard our podcast. He doesn't really he hasn't really, he asked for it though. He might listen to it now, but I should tell him to listen to this. But he was like, yeah, God just keeps winking at you. Like, look at all these, literally
That's
these
hilarious.
winks from God. And I was like, Father, you don't even know.
You don't even know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because-
Our bear
gosh.
winks right now.
That's
yeah,
great.
exactly. So it was
Yeah.
just a God, like
was
a
meta
a
God
meta
wink.
wink. It was a meta God wink.
wink. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
there you go.
Oh my gosh. Okay, before we close off, so first of all, thank you so much, Alex, for sharing.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful to hear like about how the Lord has been working and everything. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that it will really resonate with, even people who had like air quotes perfect families,
Yeah.
you know. There's like stuff that will reach into the depths of your heart and just tug on you with the love of the Father from all of eternity. Sorry, that was very dramatic. Anyways, so thank you for being here with us this week. And and next week is our finale for the season.
It is.
And then that's it for season 3. So woo-hoo! Alex, this is the penultimate episode. What a way to end. Yeah, beautiful.
An honor, y'all.
God bless you guys. We'll talk to you all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.